An asbestos trust fund is a fund that is created to compensate the victims of asbestos exposure. Most of the asbestos trust funds compensate mesothelioma, lung cancer, a few other cancers, and asbestosis. Johns Manville is the original bankrupt asbestos defendant. December 31st, 1982, under an avalanche of litigation, Johns Manville, a very successful company, files for bankruptcy and creates the original Asbestos Trust Fund. It takes several years, several other companies follow. Today, there's probably 30 to 40, maybe even 50 companies that are in asbestos bankruptcy and have trusts. Some of these companies are highly specialized either by region or job, trade, or by the type of facility they were in. But most of these 30 or 40 asbestos bankruptcy trusts would be available to basically anyone who applied if they were in the right job setting. The benefits of asbestos trust funds are significant. First and foremost, you no longer have to sue and serve the defendant. What does that mean? You'll be making an application to the Asbestos Trust Funds fund for compensation. Some proof is still required, but that proof is not the same as what would be required in a courtroom lawsuit. In a courtroom lawsuit, preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not, is the standard. But for the trust fund, they just need evidence that you've proven that you were exposed to the product. Typically, we'll use work history, Social Security records which support the employment, and an affidavit of exposure that outlines how you or your loved one was exposed to asbestos from that product. And more often than not, we will be successful with that claim. That claim will pay. So that's one of the benefits, is the ease. Now, the money comes faster than with a viable litigation defendant. Litigation defendants take their time. They're in business, whether it's their insurance or company money, they just do not pay as quickly. The trusts are set up for the victims of asbestos exposure, and the money is released more quickly. Part of the reason why that is that the plaintiff's attorneys have a steering committee. Our law firm has served on several of those steering committees, and we make sure that the money flows to the victims, because that is the whole purpose of the asbestos bankruptcy, is to get the company out of litigation, but also to get money to the victims of asbestos exposure. The reason this is important and interesting is because what happens is we end up making a number of claims. Could be 10 claims, 20 claims, 30 claims, depending on the work history. And we're trying to get compensation for you or your loved one, frankly, as much as possible. We want to get you as much compensation as we can. And the trick is to try to put you in as many environments where you would have been exposed to asbestos as possible. It may be that your employment was in a large refinery that is conceded for several trusts. And in addition to those conceded trusts, meaning the companies admit that their products that contained asbestos were at the site, we may also try to get evidence from you, your coworker, or someone else who worked at the site about other products that are not conceded from the site. And I'm just using this as an example of how we would try to get you compensation from more than just one trust, more than just 6 trusts. When you see results that are over $1 million in litigation and in bankruptcy, what you're really seeing is the aggregate of the settlement. You're not seeing one trust fund that paid. You're seeing a whole bunch of work that was done by the attorneys to get compensation from as many sources as possible. You've got people at Meso Fund who can help provide some guidance, and there are lawyers waiting to take your call to investigate your claim, and we're going to look at it carefully and evaluate all of the different bankruptcy trusts that are potentially available to you or your loved one. And we're also going to take a peek and see if we can figure out who the viable solvent defendants in the case are that we could potentially litigate the case. And we'll obviously discuss all of that with you before we take any steps on your behalf.